Fantasy football fans, listen up. Time is running out to join the best ball leagues on playdraft.com. The season is around the corner. We are already at the first kickoff night, but you still have time to sign up for a best ball league until the end of this Sunday. Now, what is Playdraft? Playdraft is a fantastic new way of playing daily fantasy football. They also now include a best ball format, which is similar to the ones you know at MFL 10. But so basically, you draft a team, set it, forget it. You don't have to worry about lineup decision making. Player injured, no worries, because your team that you drafted will carry you throughout the season, and the computer will always pick the highest scoring player for you in each week to week scoring. So just draft the best players you can, beat your friends, beat strangers, whoever. And the best part of all this is you can play for money. League starts from anywhere from $3 to well over $20. So there's a league size, league fees that will fit for anyone. Unlike most DFS sites, you will not have to deal with salary cap. Play in a real live snake draft as you're used to in your redraft leagues, and just play with your friends or play with strangers for all season long. For a limited time only, all new players who sign up on PlayDraft with our code FakePigskin will get a $3 entry to any of their contests. That's right, you can play for real money for free. And if you use our promo code, you'll also get free access to our premium content, which covers you for the whole season, whether you're playing Dynasty, Redraft, or Daily Fantasy. All of these will be covered in our site at Fake Pigskin. So hurry up now before the time runs out. Just search Draft in your app store on your mobile, or go to playdraft.com, come play for free with promo code Fake Pigskin. Now we will go to our regular scheduled program. Welcome everyone. Forgive my fiasco, all that editing is still not perfect. I'm still trying to look for someone who can really help me out with all the production and editing. But welcome back. This is I believe our 6th episode of A Dynasty Mind, and today we have a fantastic episode for you. Fantastic because it is officially the start of the football season. Kickoff is starting tonight for us at 8 p.m. Eastern, I believe, with our first game. And who can be more excited than all of us Dynasty owners who has pined away through the whole off season waiting for this day when points count, when your team is being all this time you've prepared your team for. So this is an exciting time. Today's episode, I will talk just briefly over some Dynasty musing, and then we have a couple of questions burning questions that needs to be answered that can prepare you in this season and also heading into the future as you continue to build your dynasty, maybe even your empire. So let's start off by just talking about one of the resources that you can use. Our Fake Pigskin, as this Dynasty Mind is presented to you by. FakePigskin.com is having its first week for free, so anyone, you can access all our contents. And as you can see, we are coming out with contents. Boom, boom, boom. We have Angle of Pursuit podcast that's happening every week, maybe even every other day. I lost count of how many episodes we're cranking out, but these are some fantastic redraft resources led to you by our man Ron McLeese, as you know him, Mad Dog McLeese. I think that's his Twitter handle. But he's having these inviting great guests to talk about what to expect in the season every week, reacting appropriately to news, to breaking news, to injuries, to a lot of different things that are happening. We have our newest writer, Shane P. Hallam, whom I'm known since the beginning of my Dynasty musing. He has mentored me through my first year and second year, and now he is part of our Fake Pigskin family. And this is his article that he just wrote, "The Curious Case of Jonathan William." Why should you read about it? Because this man is a brilliant, brilliant mind who has been writing about college prospects even before Devi was trendy, or even when people started paying attention to rookies and investing in the future picks. Shane P. Hallam already got you covered on all of that. We also have the DFS contents. Luke Taylor, our DFS writer, will give you the success to dominate your FanDuel leagues. And we also have Jason Tran, who is doing our weekly rankings. And in all these resources to you for you to test it out for free. And as I said in a promo, if you sign up through PlayDraft, you can get all of these contents for free throughout the year, keep you updated. One of the things that I do personally when you sign up is I will help you with any lineup decision makings, any waiver ideas that is specific to your league. Yes, no longer will there be just information that is like general fit for everybody. I will give you general advice. I will give you specific advice. Specific advice to your league setting, to your roster requirements, to maybe even working around with your league mates. Just this past week, I had the pleasure of designing a draft cheat sheet, more so like a draft board for one of our premium members. Gave him one-to-one kind of advice tailored to his league, but also to his preference. He's a running back oriented person because of his standard league. I will work with you. I will see who you want, who you prefer, and I will advise you why I think this player you can reach later, or you can trade for this player, when you should trade for this player, and all that. So all the specific advice you can get access to me when you sign up for our Fake Pigskin. The best part of this, it's only $3.99 a month, but if you sign up for a year, it's $40 a month, so you're basically getting 2 months for free. And Fake Pigskin doesn't just stop at football. We have baseball, we have NBA, we have Supercross. I can bet you out there that nobody out there has Supercross fantasy out there. And we also have our UFC content. So all these fantastic things I'm introducing to you. Take the first week to kind of look around, see the feel for our writers, and see how we can help you out. If you have any questions, reach out to me at ffdynasty101 on Twitter, or my email ffdynasty101@gmail.com. Fantastic. So today's musing. This is the start of the season, as I mentioned quite frequently, and so it would mean that what do Dynasty owners, what can they do? It seems more like a time for redraft owners who react to every news. Everything that happens in the redraft world trickles down and has an effect on your Dynasty team, and rightfully so. But you can still start thinking as a Dynasty owner. And some of the things that I think that are a useful exercise that I've seen with other Dynasty owners and myself have been employing is try to make hypotheses, try to make guesses, try to kind of think about any bold calls you might be happening. If you yourself are too hesitant to make bold calls, you don't even need to share it. Just write it down somewhere. Write the reason why you think player X will gain value throughout the season, or that this player right now everyone is down on, but I believe that by off season he will gain a prominent role. So I'll give you some examples. I think Mike Williams of the Chargers, right now everyone's down on him, and it is the correct move by all means. the correct move because he is hurt. He's injured and he's not going to be playing for at least half the season. So that is a long wait for anyone to kind of know what he can bring to the NFL. If he can even play in the NFL at his speed and all the questions regarding his measurables are already put into question. So can he succeed, or is he going to be a guy that we can forget about very, very quickly and just considered another first round bust? For me, I will put this hypothesis to the test. I think that Mike Williams will eventually become the 1A to Keenan Allen 1B. Yeah, so that is a bold call, but rather instead of seeing it as a bold call, I would call that a hypothesis. And I have every reason to believe that he has the ball skills, the things that he's shown in college, and all the measurables that he brings will bring success. Perhaps not as a wide receiver 1, but maybe a wide receiver 2. Keenan Allen I still love, but we're talking about Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. They're pretty similar in their profile. And so I would take a stab at saying that Mike Williams will become a great value, and I would target to try to acquire him before he comes back, or even after he comes back and he still puts up disappointing game. Great, fantastic. You have a great buy low opportunity. So some of you may ask, at what point then should I be worried? So should I be shying away from him? I think for me, the first sign would be to kind of look at if he suffers another catastrophic injury, like an ACL tear, which he's never had. His major injury in college was a neck injury, which is equally as serious, but I don't hear any lingering effects from the neck injury for now. But any major injuries to the ligaments area, or that he is unable to separate from cornerbacks, well, that's not even a concern for me right now. Any major injuries, that would be an exit point for me. This is similar to, say, a Kevin White for me, who still hasn't gained back the form due to some injuries to his to the legs, to the knee areas, and that's back-to-back years. That's when I start moving away from this Mike Williams. But for now, I'm putting my hypothesis that Mike Williams will become a very effective wide receiver, a high-end wide receiver 2 at the least, and I will be targeting to trade for him. And I will use any assets that are that I can acquire from now until close to his return. Any surprises I may have on my team, I will package all those together and try to target to get him. So that is an example of what you can do as a dynasty owner. You're trying to look forward, trying to look for players that are overlooked now because they haven't shown up. We have a lot of injuries to our rookies. Some may not even see the field this year, and people are quickly to forget about him and start putting doubts in them whether they can stay healthy or whether they're easily replaceable. I'll give you some example. Carlos Hyde, he's on IR. Rico Gathers, he's on IR, but he's slated to return. Guys like Joe Williams, who is on IR, and we won't see him this year. But if he can develop, he can come back next year, you can buy him for way less than what people bought him for this year. I venture to say a low-end second round or maybe even a third round pick in 2018 will net you a Joe Williams. John Ross, who was starting the year injured and will be quickly forgotten because he's already had the label injury prone. So he will cost you less than what people bought him for this year. So these are all things to kind of look about, test your hypotheses, put forth some bold calls, and you don't have to put this online or tell people or pound your chest about it. These are some things that you have to start thinking about going forward, how you can acquire these assets that have upside, that our expert writers or analysts have deemed as very, very high-end talented players, but who are marred by injuries or by other factors that are not putting them out. So yes, even put out some bold calls, some bold hypotheses to say which player right now has the most buzz will kind of lose value over the years. Some other things you can do as a dynasty owner, of course, is to pay attention to college football. College football is exciting. I am very Devi oriented because I think it'll help me kind of formulate my ideas before these players are even in scouts radar or even in the mainstream dynasty area talk about. There are tons of Devi content out there, and I encourage you to go look for them. College football was fantastic last week. We started hearing names like Harris Campbell. We hear names like J.K. Dobbins, Simi Cobb Jr., who is eligible for draft this year, Juwan Jennings, John Kelly. All these names are growing now. And for those who are involved in the Devi community, these are not surprising names. But for those who are only involved in Dynasty and have some interest in the Devi, these are names that you will not hear, but you need to file away. What I do is for every recruiting cycle, I have a spreadsheet created and put down all the names that people are high on, all the 4-star, 5-star, maybe even some 3 stars. And I start filing them away. Even though I won't be able to watch them all, I can understand where they're coming from, where their pedigree is, why people were high on them then, and did they translate some of those skills that are useful for the NFL, or if they are just college superstars. I need to be able to tease those out. So I pin my ears to Twitter, pin my ears to my spreadsheet, and start preparing. Start thinking about next year, even though I know you'll have your hands full with this year in the NFL, just trying to attack the waiver wire, trying to make trades and all that. I understand it. But this is what makes Dynasty exciting, is that you have to wear multiple hats all the time at any time. So finally, one thing that I do want to talk about concerning fantasy football, and I want you guys to be aware of, is the words we use. Language is a very important factor in fantasy football, regardless if you're playing seasonal, dynasty, DFS, best ball. The words we use, we attach a certain label to certain players, and it triggers our emotion. It somehow has this deep seething effect on our emotions about a certain player. So for example, calling a player a bust, calling a player overrated, it triggers negative connotations and attached to these players, and then we file these quick words away in our head. And what it does is it makes us start seeking out information to confirm these biases. And yes, these are biases. People often don't understand how this works. When a player is said to be overrated, it doesn't mean that he's complete crap. It doesn't mean that he's useless. He still has use. He's just rated a bit higher than what others think he should be, but he still can put forth production. My bias, for example, comes with a player like Jordan Matthews, right? He's a bust. He's inconsistent. He's a garbage time hero. All of these connotations make me seek out information to make sure that, I would hate on Jordan Matthews. When in fact, I've missed out on a lot of his production. And when it comes to DFS and redraft particularly, I don't really care about long-term players. He is useful for me from certain weeks, and if I can identify when those weeks he could be useful. But right now he's in Buffalo. I really have no interest in him. But that is sort of like an example of what I mean. In the same way, when people attach labels like underrated, special, overlooked, not talked about, we have this creeping sensation to kind of attach positive vibes to this player, and then we seek out those information in film. We see that, this player is way better with his hands than what people give him credit for, or this player is really he's going to be a stud. Look at the way he can outrun or outmaneuver or juke his opponents. And that's all fantastic, but when you match that up with the stats, you'll kind of see that these are merely peripheral stats that let me put this in a way that might be better. These are peripheral stats that tells you this player should be better than he is, but at the end of the day, if the results is not there, how long are you going to hang on to all these peripheral positive statistics? And you have to make a decision. You have to react. I don't mean to say that you need to overreact or underreact, but you need to react to when positive players with quote unquote potential or players with advanced statistics that support them. If these results don't match up with them, you can't hang on to a player just because you have a positive feel about them. That's why statistics are useful, but also that's why film are useful, and you have to marry them together. So these are some of my Dynasty musing. Carry this with you throughout the season and keep thinking and working on your process on how you want to change your team. All right, so now let's head on to our question segment. Alrighty, and we have a couple of good questions submitted to me by the fine folks of Fake Pigskin, Twitter, and GroupMe. If you ever have any questions, again, hit me up on at ffdynasty101 on Twitter, or my email is ffdynasty101@gmail.com. So let's look at our first question. Our first question is by C. Southwick Craig. I hope I pronounced your last name right. So let's, since we have time today, let me go through each of these questions. What to do with Jonathan Williams? So by now, all of you know that Jonathan Williams was unexpectedly cut by the Bills. No form of rhyme or reason why he was cut. He was initially slated to be LaShawn McCoy's maybe like handcuff, or someone who you might rely on if McCoy ever misses some time. But now he's cut from the Bills. There was no rhyme or reason. We know he had some character concerns. I believe it was DUI or PED, I wasn't sure. But that wasn't the reason why he was cut. There's no suspension forthcoming with him. The only speculation we have so far is that Jonathan Williams was a holdover from the previous regime, and Doug Marrone was not happy with most of those guys, so he is set to revamp the whole roster. Well, if you don't know yet, Jonathan Williams was picked up by Denver as a practice squad body. In redraft, that means he has absolutely no value unless injury strikes to all the running backs, and they have a lot of active running backs in Denver. Looking forward from a dynasty lens, though, I still think that Jonathan Williams has a role. You have to pay attention whether he is signed by a different team, whether he's poached by a different player, because that is a practice squad. The practice squad the practice squatters can be moved to a different team if they get a better offer, or if they feel like they can find a better opportunity elsewhere. So if you have a large roster, if you have a taxi squad that still allows you to store veterans, I think it's worth holding on to him. I wouldn't put too much priority into keeping him if you find a better player. And how much better, if you want a specific idea. Let's say Ted Ginn gets hurt, or Willie Snead gets into more trouble. I would definitely replace Jonathan Williams for Tommy Lee Lewis, because I've seen Tommy Lee Lewis do it during the regular season, even though it's a very small sample size and his role is very limited. But at the least, I know he has a role, rather than keeping a guy who may or may not have a team going forward. That's to say that John Williams has a very low value, but at the least he still has value. His second question comes in: is Perriman a player to sell or buy? I'm sorry, I kind of mistyped the question. But is Perriman a buy or sell player? Is there any return for him? For most of you who know me, I've never been a fan of how high Perriman was drafted and all the accolades he's receiving. He has not lived up to his price and still continues to be a worry when it comes to injury. And even in his role, his skill set, I don't see him as more than right now. I consider him on the same tier as a Terrence Williams. And for most people, they still draft Perriman ahead of Terrence Williams, which I don't get. Is he a sell at this point? I mean, based off the consensus, not consensus, but based off the market value, kind of people still give him some value. For example, if I say on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being absolutely garbage value, you can replace him with any body and be happy with it, for 10 being someone who you absolutely must have on your roster, he is about a 3. Okay, so he has value based on perception, based on expectations, and based on others who feel like that he can still have a role with the Ravens. But it is, do I sell him now or do I wait for a couple of big games? Well, to tell you the truth, I don't foresee a lot of big games. So if he has one big game, I am ready to sell him to anyone, and for whatever I can take that's at that 3 to 4 value on that value scale. So that's my kind of take. Others may disagree with me, and I'm fine with it. But you cannot deny that his value is a falling knife right now, and he might just fall off the edge. Yeah. All right. Question by Shane P. Hallam. Hey, one of our newest writer that we signed this week in our Fake Pigskin, and I've already talked effusively about him. Shane asks, will Patriots RB just screw at us fantasy players all year long? Simple answer, yes. Patriots has never stopped screwing around with the fantasy owners. Even last year, when we find some semblance of consistency, you can identify the blunt game. All throughout the years, Patriots have very rarely shown a tendency to rely on one running back. We know their game plan is to play to their best of their ability, play the matchup. It could be a Dion Lewis week, it could be a Burkhead week, it could be a Mike Gillislee week, it could be a Chris Hogan week, it could be a Brandon Cooks week, it could be a Gronk week. So not only is the backfield limited by what they can give, they're also limited by the receiving game. Some games Patriots may decide to pass more. Some games they may decide to run more. Even Tom Brady can't count him out as a goal line back, because he has been poaching touchdowns every time he has the potential to poach touchdown every time he's on the line. So Patriots is not for the faint of heart. I've hammered this point even to the days when Dion Lewis was considered by all means the featured back. I fought with a lot of Dynasty analysts telling them he is a replaceable talent. Someone will replace him because he is hurt. They didn't believe me. Carl, I'm looking at you. Didn't believe me that Dion Lewis is a replaceable talent. Well, 2 years fast forward, yes, he's now even considered to be in line for any of the work. Or maybe Bill Belichick is just trolling us, showing us that maybe Dion Lewis is still the primary guy. You have a lot of questions. You'll never feel safe. That's not the word, but you'll never feel comfortable with any of their backs. When you own them, it's because you probably drafted them. They were probably the best choice that you have. With that said, that's also baked into their trade value. If you are to trade them now to anyone, they will use this argument against you to lower your value. So you're left with having to sit with this inconsistency from week to week, praying, hoping, kind of using your biases to kind of justify that this player is worth keeping for the long haul. I cannot recommend that. I've avoided all running backs from the New England backfield as much as I can. The shares that I do own, I inherited them mainly Mike Gillislee because I thought he was going to stick with the Bills as a backup to LaShawn McCoy. But now that I have him, nobody wants him. They use all the same uh, argument against me. So you're left with the choice to either sell lower than you wanted or sell these running backs for wide receiver, low end wide receiver twos or threes, the inconsistent ones. We're talking Mike Wallace, we're talking some of the older guys that have a questionable role. So it's not a positive thought, but this is kind of what I see going forward with Patriots running back. All right. Final bag of questions by Tom Finelli. He is a guy that's not on Twitter, I don't believe, but he brought in a bunch of questions. And these questions are worth dissecting one by one. His first question: how many times did Jonathan Williams? I'm sorry. I'm just so sorry. That's not a real question, right? We already answered that one too. Okay, so for his real question, why do we continue to overestimate first to third year players and underestimate proven vets? A lot of reasons and this is a very astute question in the dynasty world. As I kind of observe how dynasty landscape evolve, it has gone from the days of using few statistics to a full-blown measurable analytics kind of industry. Yeah. And that's not to say that they're wrong, but a lot more weight has been given because they are considered the empirical findings. They are considered the golden standard for pinpointing out the next best fantasy football players. And what I mean by that is this thing called age-related production. When you have a first, second, and third year player, you are sitting with someone who will peak, who is slated to have a peak year between their first 3 years. The first years you'll get some excitement. The second years you want to see growth. The third year is their breakout year, and then year 4, 5, 6, 7 should be their peak year. This is the thinking. This is the theory that goes for players. Their peak year, and that means you are owning an asset that can lead you through 4 or 5 years. So that was the initial thinking. That's kind of what I observe, how people are thinking about this. Age-related production often favors the younger player, and not necessarily their skill set, but the theory kind of focuses on that there's a breakout age, and it usually happens at a much younger age. So we're not even talking about players who are in their first, third year. Players are focused on their age-related breakout. If they break out at a younger age and it matches up with the analytics, then that means that this player is probably going to repeat every single year thereafter until they hit their cliff year, which is around 28 or a year 28, year 29, 30 plus year old. That's a cliff. So the idea here for building a process, I'm not saying that it's wrong, but it's definitely something that's being applied, way over applied by many dynasty owners, is that they want to cycle through the peak age and kind of get away from the cliff year, try to avoid the cliff years. So kind of a Belichickian kind of trading the player away, or avoiding players who are headed towards the cliff, and profiting on the early years and the peak years. Now I say this is theory because it hasn't worked out really well. I've tried this, and analytics community, you might be upset with me saying that I probably didn't apply it right, but I've tried every angle with this, and it remains that proven veterans have their place, rookies have their place, young players have their place. Production and skill set, and certain qualitative data that is not captured by measurables, uh, are unaccounted for when you put age above everything else. You know, when you put age before everything else, you'll get this effect of where people are overestimating the younger players and underestimating the proven vets. For me, age has its place, but it's always skill set, talent, through the eyes of scouts, numbers, whatever first, and then we consider the other kind of like statistics, like not statistics, but other elements or factors like age, years in a pro, uh, injuries, or their role and scheme. All of that comes secondary because for me, uh, talent production mix, and it's a hard way to kind of quantify how that is. I'm hoping someday someone can quantify this idea, but that has to come first, for me at least, has to come first before age. When people start their argument by arguing that, oh, this player's age is he's only so young and he's younger than this guy who's only gotten to the league, what is their talent? Are their talent even comparable before you kind of start making the age as a tiebreaker? And unfortunately, for most owners that I've seen right now, then this is the landscape of Dynasty, is that people just take one small aspect um, of all of these analytics and then run away with it. Becomes their narrative, becomes their process, and becomes a something that they don't even go back to test out if their thoughts are correct. Okay, so that's a long way of kind of answering that question. The second question, we're going back to Perriman. Perriman seems to be a very popular guy here. What's his startup ADP compared to Macklin's and Wallace's? So I checked into the latest data. Perriman is actually sandwiched between Macklin and Wallace. So we kind of see that the Dynasty community is not overestimating youth at this point because they know that Perriman still hasn't shown it on the field. Macklin has, but Macklin's older. Wallace is the oldest. So the ADP, the latest data that I found was Macklin is a wide receiver 46 in the 90-something overall pick. Perriman is wide receiver 57 in the 116th overall. And Mike Wallace is the wide receiver 67, the last one, and it's in the 140 kind of range. So that's kind of the latest data that is showing. Is the term dynasty becoming an oxymoron with high volume of trades that are completed each season? So this is a good question. It's more of a philosophical question. What does dynasty mean? For some, it means like you grab a team and you are going to carry with that every year to dominate your league, and just having a core set of players and working with that to become a dynasty. Whereas for me, a dynasty is less about the asset and more about your ability to win consistently year over year. So does the high volume of trade negate the term dynasty? For me, it does not, because for me, it's typically what I did, not what the pieces did, so that's more of a semantics kind of discussion, and if you want to continue to discuss that more, you can always hit me up. What can we expect from this year's crop of rookie wide receivers? That's a very good question. I came in this year quite high on a lot of the receivers, albeit I think the running backs were still the top of this class. Initially, there were a couple of exciting wide receivers to start off with, but then injuries really struck. We've lost Carlos Henderson. We won't see Mike Williams for half a year. John Ross is going to miss about 2 to 3 more weeks from now, even before the season starts. And then we have to look into Zay Jones, who is now dealing with a rebuilding Bills. How much are the Bills in winning this year, and how much would that affect Zay Jones's playing time? Other wide receivers that I'm kind of blanking out on, but we see that the top of the crop outside of Corey Davis, who we haven't seen anything from him. He missed the whole preseason, but he is hoping to play. Well, we're gonna expect a very slow start for the rookie wide receivers, and that is a prime time for buying if you want. They're out of sight, out of mind right now. And I believe that you can buy them for less than what they're bought for in the early parts of the off season. But what can we expect going forward? Very good question. Personally, I still think that they should remain. I have an optimistic outlook for them. I think they are wide receiver twos. As far as those who will play, Corey Davis, John Ross, Mike Williams, by the end of the year, they'll be considered wide receiver twos in a dynasty sense, meaning that they are matchup dependent, but they are also exciting plays when they have good matchups. So that's kind of my idea of what a wide receiver two is, and their values won't drop off as fast. The worst outcome we can have is a Laquan Treadwell kind of outcome, which I don't expect for any of the threes that I just named. Perhaps the most healthy one might possibly be just Zay Jones. Juju Smith-Schuster. Yeah, I forgot about him too. I don't expect a big role from him, but keep in mind that this is a great time to buy, especially after week 1 or 2, when we still don't see anything exciting from any of these rookie wide receivers. I don't expect anything exciting about them all the way until November. So that's a large window for people to be like, these are roster fillers. I need something more useful. So that's kind of how I'm attacking them. Will they be better than next year? I think next year will have greater upside as far as their wide receiver crops. Next year's wide receiver crop will have higher potential, higher upside, but they'll be behind in terms of experience, which I think is very valuable for rookie wide receivers. Which QB is the next Prescott and which QB is the next RG3? Now, by this question, I think you mean to ask which one will be a breakout guy that can sustain some success, or which guy is a flash in a pan. It's hard to tell. I'm waning on my confidence in Deshaun Watson. He was my best rookie QB coming in because I fell in love with his performance in the BCS Bowl and throughout his performance in Clemson, where he had a very simple scheme where he just needed to work with talented wide receivers around him. But his accuracy is pretty concerning. So I believe that he'll be more RG3 than he will be a sustained success. That's not to say that he's worse than Tom Savage, because I do believe that he's better than Tom Savage. Even with his legs, that's like perfect for him. I was hoping for a Prescott kind of development from him, but I don't see it. Prescott showed it last preseason, how he became more of a pocket passer. But Deshaun Watson did not. So now I think one that will likely see more success and has the best chance of succeeding like a Prescott for me is Mitch Trubisky. And I'm reserving my judgment for Patrick Mahomes. As exciting as he is, his fundamental is so shoddy. People can't say anything negative about Patrick Mahomes because he did wonderful things in preseason. But if you think about how he played in the preseason and try to apply that to the regular season, he'll have exciting weeks, but he'll have miserable weeks because his unwillingness to stay in the pocket for long and also his stance is his ability to read the field is still very, very limited, and he'll need some work. And thank goodness he has Alex Smith in front of him. The other quarterback that everyone's high on, Deshaun Kaiser, who is slated to be a starter. He is, to me, 50-50 between Prescott. He's right in there between RG3 and Prescott for me if we're considering sustained success versus flash in the pan. He has shown good, exciting throws in the pocket, shown a poise that exceeds even some of the vets that we've seen in the pros. But at the same time, he might be a limited upside kind of guy. And maybe that's fine with you. And that's fine with me as long as I know what I'm getting in Kaiser. I know whether I should be buying or selling, at what point I should be buying, at what point I should be selling. And that the difference between buy and sell point for him is very small and very thin. You just need to figure out what you are comfortable with as your signal caller. So yeah, I hope these answers are helpful for you guys. These are some fantastic questions because these are some of the things I want you to be using as a hypothesis going into the season to test it out, and that will help you refine your process as a dynasty owner, how you are improving your way you evaluate, how you're improving your way of making sound decisions over the long term, and how you carry over the successes to next season. That is another episode of A Dynasty Mind. Hope you enjoyed it. Shout out for this segment. I'd like to give a shout out to one of my buddies. Let me find out what his Twitter handle is. He is the co-host of Dynasty Fantasy Focus. Devin Spurl, a big Cheesehead fan, and he still has Eddie Lacy in his background. I have no idea why. But Devin, Dynasty Devin, he's a very sharp mind. He's in the process of designing his own metric, which is awesome, and I can't wait to test it out. The creator of Predator, which is a fantastic way of determining if there's success for running backs, how they carry those over from year to year in college and to the pros. My second recommendation for you to follow, and I think he definitely deserves more followers, is where is his name? Sorry, not garbage. Sorry, this is completely unprofessional. Oh, there he is. I was interacting with him today. Rob Willett of DLF. I'm sure a lot of you are already following him, but if you aren't, at Rob Willett, WILLETTE 24. Fantastic for Devi news, if you like, and he is a trusted source as he write for DLF, as you know, DLF being one of the major titans in our league, and they're probably second place to our fake pigskin, but you know we just don't want to outshine them. Anyways, Rob is fantastic follow because he will drop those Devi nuggets every week after he watches the games, and then he'll drop those nuggets for you to kind of pay attention to. So his thread is very enjoyable to read and very helpful in helping you prepare for your Devi. Lastly, what I wanted to talk about is my Digging Deep article. I've talked about this last episode. If you share my show on Twitter, you retweet my links, I will DM you the direct link to my Digging Deep article, which is a fantasy depth chart article, a fantasy depth chart of all 32 teams in the NFL. And I've sorted them by tiers, which one goes first if injury strikes, which one you should look into next if your league is very deep. It's helpful for redraft, it's helpful for dynasty. You can uncover some great gems if you use this article. Next week, the paywall goes up for Fake Pigskin, but as long as you share my video, you retweet it on Twitter, and I see you, I will give you access to this article all year long, and you can use it. I will constantly be updating it, and it will be. I promise you, it will be a fantastic tool for you to use in throughout this year in fantasy football. All right. Have a good day. Hope you're excited about tonight's kickoff. And yeah, go Hurricanes.